Glue Guys is proud to have Ramp as the first presenting sponsor of the podcast. I was shocked to learn that most financial teams spend 80% of their time doing operational work and only 20% of their time doing strategic work. Ramp flips that equation. This financial operations platform simplifies everything about how businesses spend money and spend their time. With Ramp, you can manage spend approvals, control your expenses, automate your accounting, track your vendor relationships, and even book your travel. Ramp enables finance teams to focus all of their attention on what's most important. It allows companies to issue physical and virtual cards to every employee with spend limits, category restrictions, and automated compliance checks to ensure spend outside of expense policy is never allowed to happen. Ramp eliminates both manual expense reports for employees and removes the need for accountants to spend hundreds of manual hours each month classifying transactions so financials are accurate. The Ramp team is all in on saving their customers time and money. Ramp is used by best-in-class businesses like Shopify, Airbnb, Anduril, and many more. They all use Ramp to manage their spend and automate away tedious financial processes that just distract from the main thing. Ramp is easy to use. Get started now and build a more efficient team and a more profitable business. Whether you have 5 employees or 25,000, go to ramp.com/GG to sign up for free and get a $250 welcome bonus. That's ramp.com/GG.
All right, Glue Guy listeners, let's talk about something that might just change the way you sleep forever. 8 Sleep. You've probably heard of the pod, right? I mean, if it's good enough for Elon Musk and Mark Zuckerberg, it's probably worth checking out for yourself. But they've just upped their game with the Pod 4 Ultra, the new gold standard in intelligent sleep systems. Now, here's the deal. The Pod 4 Ultra is like having a climate-controlled assistant in your bed. No, not like that, you freaks, but it is simple. You just add it to your current mattress like a fitted sheet and boom, it automatically cools or warms each side of your bed. So no more battles over the thermostat with your partner, no more blanket tug of war. It's all been settled. It's been clinically proven to give you up to an hour more quality of sleep every night, which, I mean, who couldn't use that? The standout feature here is the cooling capability. This thing can cool your side of the bed to 20 degrees below room temperature. Perfect for those hot summer nights. Now imagine setting your bed to a perfect 55 degrees while you're in a deep sleep, all managed by the Pod's autopilot feature, which adjusts the temperature throughout the night. So you get a deeper, more restorative sleep even without thinking about it. Unbelievable. Now, I took over 1,000 naps over the course of my 13-year NBA career. I played well over 1,000 games. And Michael Lewis once called me the no stats all-star. Now, if I had 8 sleep during my career, I would have been the stats all-star. Seriously. Sleep is the new Rolex, it's the new Mercedes, it's the new luxury brand. So why wouldn't you want the best sleep money can buy, the best sleep possible? Now, the best part, you can add the Pod 4 Ultra to any bed, whether you're just an athlete trying to optimize recovery or someone looking to improve your quality of life. So right now, you can get $350 off the Pod 4 Ultra at 8sleep.com/Glue Guys. Just use the code Glue Guys. Level up your sleep and thank me later. Let's talk about Glue Guys.
Well, Shane, I mean, I think you're the original, right? So you gotta start us off. You're the one who has the most brand street cred as a glue guy.
Well, ironically, even though we gave ourselves the name Glue Guys, can you be a self-proclaimed glue guy? that's the irony of this. Honestly, you can talk about yourself in the third person and declare yourself, I'm him and be Conor McGregor and be the world's greatest promoter. But to call yourself a glue guy might be one of the biggest paradoxes in sports, right?
I think that's right. I don't think
I ever would have said that when I was playing, that I'm a glue guy. I do think as I've gotten older now and whatever role I have, I take pride. No, I think there's an element that it's a little more of my identity that I've accepted that I'm a team guy. I'm going to do what I need to, how can I contribute to the team? Right. And it could be, I'm going to do whatever I can to do that. But I think it's something like an old age. I think as I call myself an old man, that I think I've taken that on. I didn't do it as a younger person, even though I guess I hopeful that I was doing the same things, like the same principles applied, team first,
Is it kind of begrudging almost? You know what I'm saying? Like, I feel like I'm very proud of it now. I feel like, honestly, when you're younger, is it kind of an insult? Would you feel like,
absolutely.
No, like, right?
100%. 100%. Look, when you're young, you're trying to make a name for yourself.
Yeah.
Right. And that is a huge slight. Like, look, when I grew up, I was not athletic. I did not fit the picture of like a superstar. All right. And, your stories are a little different. All of our stories are obviously very, very different. In a lot of ways, many people could say that I peaked, when I was 13 years old. And that's kind of weird to say, but like I was the number 4 rated 7th grader in the country, according to Hoop Scoop magazine. Back in the day, it's ridiculous when you think about it. Like how you could, objectively rank all these things. Well, Hoop Scoop used to be this magazine, this national recruiting rag. It was the biggest one, and it went all the way from like the seniors all the way down to 7th grade. And I'll never forget, at the time I was 6'4", dunking the basketball, and I was a pretty good player. My teams had won Michigan AAU state championships, and I was a pretty dominant like center, right? Back in the days where it was true back to the back. I blocked every shot. I had really good coordination. I grabbed every rebound. I could finish. I didn't really shoot, but I was like Patrick Ewing essentially. And I'll never forget that day when that
just crushing these kids, Ravi,
absolutely. People taking for birth certificates,
dunking on these kids.
I was that kid. I literally had to show up to the game with a birth certificate.
I was going to say they checked your age for sure.
Yeah, that's crazy.
100%.
Yeah, I mean,
and so this magazine comes out. I'll never forget who the top 6 players were, because it terrified me. I wasn't excited about it. I was terrified by it. And number 1 player in the country, a guy named Shea Cotton.
Oh, so I remember Shea Cotton. He was from LA. He was from LA, right?
Yeah, Bellflower, from Compton.
I want to hear this list. How many of these guys I want to hear that made it from 7th grade?
Well, ironically, so Shea Cotton was number 1. And Shea Cotton was like Charles Barkley back then. Like he was like 6'4", just dunking the ball, just like this man. Like everyone thought he was like LeBron of the 2001 high school class, right? Number 2 is a guy named Edmund Saunders, out of Connecticut, played at Connecticut, big guy. Number 3 was a guy named Esteban Weaver, out of Columbus, Ohio. I think he like flunked a year, so I think he was like super, super old. But he was like this like 6'2" guard, he could dunk, do all this crazy stuff. I was number 4, and ironically, number 5 and number 6 were the Collins twins, Jason and Jaron Collins. Yeah, true story. And I played against Jason and Jaron forever, and they were like bigger than I was. They were like twin towers. They were like the original Mutombo and Alonzo Mourning back in the AAU circuit. And they played out of LA. And I never forget, because they had a kid who was dunking the ball on their team, had a Jerry curl. And so it was the Collins twins and the Jerry curl guy. So I'll never forget that. But when that Hoop Scoop magazine came out, I think most kids would be like, oh man, that's so cool. And I was like, man, I do not want to be a bust. I do not want to be
in 7th grade.
I knew this.
Holy smokes.
And
that's crazy,
I just knew like so many guys are these top guys, but like so many of them fade out. So like I was like petrified that I was going to be one of these guys that was going to bust. And
that's a lot of pressure as a 7th grader.
Yeah. And of course, look, and at the same time, I'm sort of having like my racial reckoning as a mixed kid growing up. Am I black? Am I white? I'm playing in the inner city with the brothers. I live in the suburbs with all the white kids. And so like, it was a very, very difficult time for me. It was probably the most difficult interpersonally that I ever had, maybe outside of my retirement. And I just was trying to figure out a lot of things. And so the one thing I did know is that I just loved basketball. I love to compete, and I love to win, right? And so, with that,
were you thinking about going pro at that point?
Oh yeah,
it was in your brain, like it was back there. Like this is the goal.
Can you imagine how crazy it is to think as a 7th grader I'm just like really feeling bad for your like 12, 13-year-old self of like, I don't want to be a bust, right? Like you're a fucking kid, right? Like that's crazy. I never would have thought, I never knew that you felt that at that age.
Oh yeah. And that was the fear that was with me my entire career. Even when I'm starting for the world championship back-to-back 5e heat, I was still worried I was going to be a bust. All right, that I was going to be overrated. So like, look, so some would say that I peaked when I was 13 years old. I had the most notoriety and like the highest ranking. Obviously, I went on to win National Player of the Year and All-American and some Hall of Fames. But that was the mentality. But going back to the glue guy thing, like I didn't think what I did was anything special. I blocked a lot of shots. I loved defense. I was tall, and defense was the one place where, like, if I blocked a lot of shots and kept my opponent from scoring, like I'm helping the team. So it's like it's good for them and it's good for me, right? Yeah. And I always felt like if I'm scoring a lot and I'm missing shots, I'm hurting the team. So I always looked at like offense as like something that was potentially could hurt the team. And if anything could hurt the team, I didn't want to do it. So I was like really like loath to shoot. I could shoot, and I had coaches say, "Man, you got to shoot the ball. Like you're a best player." I'm like, "No, I'm good. I'm going to work it." But defense was something I could go all in on because there was no downside by being a great shot blocker, a great defender. And that is a story of like why I was obsessed with defense and had a great defensive career. And maybe the reason why, a lot of people would say I fell short of my offensive potential if there was any out there.
Well, the thing that's crazy about that is it's interesting. This is not really a glue guy thing, but it's a good thought. Part of liking defense is like you can only do something good, right? Like if you do it well, is universally positive for your team. There is this thing of like you're kind of like you're not maximizing the ceiling, you're like minimizing the downside almost of like I'm not going to shoot big, or I'm not going to shoot that much. I'm only going to take really easy shots. I wonder if there's some element to that of like, I don't know, personality wise of like minimizing mistakes and, doing things that are universally positive. Cause like, you know what I'm saying? There's like natural uncertainty in a bunch of stuff.
Yeah, 100%. And I think also growing up very poor, like when you grow up poor, you limit, you try to, mitigate the damage. All right. You're not taking big cuts. And so my family was very conservative, stay in the middle, don't bring attention to yourself, just do the best you can, keep shuffling along. And I think that mindset definitely was pervasive in my basketball game. And
when was the first time you were called a glue guy by somebody who's, when did you first ever hear that?
I would say probably my freshman year at Duke. So I go to Duke, National Player of the Year in high school, #1 recruiting class in the country, the Chris Burgess and Elton Brand and William Avery. Duke was ranked #1 in the country that year going into that season. Bojo, Trajan Langdon. It was kind of the first year Duke was back. They went through a kind of a down period, but Duke was back. And so I never had any grand illusions that I was the man ever. I hoped, I prayed, maybe when I'm a junior and senior, I get a chance and it'd be my team and get a chance to go to the league. And so, my freshman year, Elton Brand gets hurt, and so I'm playing center. And I'm back guarding these 7-footers, and again, taking charges. I took 50 charges that year and diving for loose balls. And so, it was the first time that I was doing. Those are things I always did in my career, but the first time people said, "Man, this Batty just makes plays." He just when he's in the game, good things happen. He's kind of a glue guy. And, it goes back to the ethos of pickup basketball. And it makes me sad that no kids play pickup basketball anymore. Back in the day when we played, you go to the park and look, who's got next? I got next. All right, I might pick you up. But what was the one criteria of getting picked up? Got to have a game. All right. If you can help me win and stay on the court, I want you. If you can't help me, I love you. You got swag. You look great. And I'm time for your brother. And so it's the purest form of of credentials, right? It's the purest form of do you have a game? Can you help me stay on the court for as long as we can play? Because that's why we're here. Right. And so that's just the mentality that we grew up with. Have a game. Doesn't matter if you score. Doesn't matter if you're the man. Are you on the court? And there's something about like our kids, they don't have that mentality of just like, hey, I got to stay on the court, man. I got to do whatever it takes to just stay on the court and win. That makes sense?
Yeah, totally. I think it's crazy. I love, you said a word earlier, and again, it's not necessarily like a good guy thing, but I think it's something that I definitely relate to when you talked about worry, right? Like, and for you, I can't imagine as a seventh grader that you worried, and you said you worried all the way through Duke, and then even as a pro, there's this amount of worry, right? Like, I got to live up to expectations and like this pressure to perform. And, for me, it was a defining kind of moment in my life and in my career, especially. Like, I grew up, I was almost too realistic of a kid. Like, I never thought pro sports would be in my future, especially pro football. And I loved football. And if I had a dream, it was to play college football. And my dad, who's definitely a hero of mine, played college football. He didn't let me play growing up, right? He didn't like believe that youth tackle football was like a great thing. So I played all these other sports, soccer, baseball, basketball. And when I was a freshman in high school, I finally got to play tackle football, right? And there was this thing that had like been withheld from me, and I couldn't wait to play. I like loved it. And again, I think if there was like a maybe a tiny little dream that I didn't tell anybody, it was like, could I play college football? Like, I love the idea. I love Saturdays. I love turning on the TV and like the student section and the band and like being a part of something bigger than yourself, right? Like getting your education, like everything like that. I just love that entire culture, right? And I think it's the culture that we all love about college sports. And it was like, man, could I maybe go do that one day? Like, and again, I didn't tell people this, but
why didn't you tell anybody, Alex?
Again, I think I was just too realistic. It was crazy. And then you don't want to, like, you tell people and then you don't live up to it. Like, again, like, no, like it was maybe something that was there.
But there's like something about like not wanting to fail in public or something, right? Like,
probably. Yeah, for sure.
I
as a
have
kid.
that. Everybody has that,
So I finally get to play in high school. I played freshman ball as a freshman. I was like, I'll never forget. I was 5'7" and I was 107 pounds. And I had size 13 feet. So I was like the slowest guy in the field. I was not special at all. I played quarterback because I could call the plays in the huddle and hand the ball off. We ran the wing tee. I handed the ball off every single play. I played JV as a 10th grader. And then finally I made varsity as a junior. Finally. Right. Like, and I started to grow. I got a little taller, still skinny and awkward and slow. I could throw a little bit at this point. My high school running back's a guy named Reggie Bush. Right. Not bad. We're running the wing tee. I hand the ball off every single play for 2 years. Right. Like, I lost one game ever in high school on varsity. And it was a game that Reggie ran for like 350 yards and he fumbled 5 times. Okay. All security was never a premium for Reggie. But anyway, like, we had every college in the country, every single college in the country is on our campus because Reggie was phenomenal. I mean, as a 15-year-old, he was like one of the best players I've ever seen. Anyway, I can't get 2 sniffs. But I'm starting to like, again, I'm growing. I can throw a little bit at this point, and I'm like wondering if I could play college football, right? It's starting to become like, maybe I think I can. I'm getting a little confidence in it. And again, I know like every Elite 11 quarterback that year, my year, that goes on to, college scholarships, the Vince Youngs of the world, like that, Reggie McNeil, all these guys that went off and to the big schools, and kept wondering how I stacked up. Like, could I play? And again, kind of like forming a chip on my shoulder a little bit, right? Like, determined to prove that I can do it. I want a chance to prove that I can play college football. And I get one offer, and it's the University of Utah. One offer to play. And it was like, I jumped at it, man. I was so excited and hungry to go up there. And again, now, like, they have ratings for recruits and stars, and like, how many stars are you on, like, your positional ranking? Like, Shane just went through, like, I was all zeros, right? Like, not rated, 0,
And that was not Urban Meyer, right? That wasn't even the guy.
Not Urban Meyer.
Yeah.
No. Ron McBride, head coach, gave me the offer up to Utah, Mountain West school at that point.
Had you not gone to Utah, you would have gone to like an Ivy League and played there?
I was lucky enough. I had really good grades. And so I'd gotten into some Ivy Leagues. Yep. And so that was kind of the alternative. But they were like playing 1AA, and like they didn't go to the tournament. So it in my mind, it wasn't on the same level.
No, of course. I mean, it's not. But I remember you telling me like you were thrilled when you got the offer from Utah, and like your mom cried or something.
Yeah, like she definitely was like, she was adamant that I was just making this horrible life decision. Yeah, that like I wasn't going to go to Dartmouth. Yeah. And just So anyway, but like this is this dream that I'd had, like, can I play college football? Like, and I get the chance. So I jump at it, I go up, and again, no one's expecting anything of me when I step on campus. No one's expecting anything, right? Like, I totally flying under the radar. And again, I've kind of got developed this chip that I want to prove this to everybody. And I think I can now. And it was just amazing. Obviously, my freshman year is a disaster. The head coach gets fired a couple months into the season. I burned my red shirt. I was redshirting. He pulls me out of my red shirt. I played 7 plays, 7. Lost my entire year of eligibility. One of the plays was a pick 6. Okay, back at San Diego. We're playing San Diego State. I'm from San Diego. We're back at San Diego State. My high school is like 2 miles from San Diego State. Reggie, my whole high school team's there. I played like a couple snaps. One of them's a pick 6. Like, that's my freshman year. And I'm like, man, I'm thinking about transferring. It's a disaster. Obviously, we hire a guy named Urban Meyer. At that point, I had never even heard of Bowling Green, where he was coming from. I'd never even heard of him. He was just this crazy coach who ran a crazy system that was centered around quarterbacks running the ball. And I was like this goofy, tall, skinny, pocket passer. Anyway, like, fast forward, like, it was this incredible run, right? Like, timing, how much timing and luck goes into these things. And like, to be where I was, and we go on a run from there on out. I started the next 2 years. I lost 1 game as a starter, right? Like, and I played that entire time, Shane, my entire college career, I played never thinking I could play pro football. And I mean it, because I'd never worried. Like, it was amazing. Like, I played with a freedom that, like, and I was so present, because like I was living my dream. And I honestly can say this. I never played a college game like thinking about the weight of pro football was never like looming over me. And it was awesome. However, everything changed very fast for me. All of a sudden, Urban left for Florida. I'm a junior.
What year did he leave for Florida?
The same year I left. So this is like the 2004 season. He leaves.
So
I'd already graduated.
Or a senior?
I was a junior. I was a true junior.
Got it.
And I had a year. I'd started my master's in economics. I was fully expecting to come back and play another year. And, and he left. And all of a sudden I started hearing rumors like, no, you can come out. Right. And I'm like, I remember I thought I was getting punked. Remember that show on MTV that was like, my brother called me with the news, my older brother. And he's like, they'd got some research from some GMs that kind of somehow through agents had helped collect some information for me through my parents. And I remember he was like telling me it for the first time. And they were doing this unbeknownst to me. And so he's telling me, hey, we've, been helping like potentially with the decision. And he tells me like, no, if you come out, you'll be a first rounder. And I remember like I was looking around for the cameras. Like they were like trying to catch me in this because I still wouldn't believe it. I like, here I am. I'm going to New York for the Heisman, and I still like couldn't grasp that this was a reality in my future. And again, like how much I appreciated that, like that naivety. Like,
yeah, totally.
But still not a glue guy right now. Still not a glue guy.
No,
you're him. You're him.
I am him because it's this quarterback centric offense. Like I'm doing every single play at Utah. Like, it's all built around me. And again, the kind of just fell into that. And overnight though, like everything changes. I declare for the draft. I'm doing the crazy combine thing. And here I find myself in the green room in New York City the day of the draft, and the freaking commissioner calls my name first.
That's
right? Like this
crazy,
scene, if you're a football fan, like I've watched this my entire life. I watched the draft. It's this like iconic thing, and like watched all these, Peyton Manning walk out, and like these guys, like larger than life, people. And all of a sudden it's me. And it's like this outer body experience. And I'm getting drafted by the 49ers, this franchise that sets the bar pretty high when it comes to quarterback play. And I'm flying out to San Francisco and I'm doing press conferences, and like I'm the face of the San Francisco 49ers. I'm the future. I'm 20 at this point. So I always thought I was crazy young. I'm not a 7th grader, but I'm 20, and everything flipped for me. And for the first time in my life, worry consumed me. Self-doubt, right? Like, am I going to be good enough? I was haunted by this word bust, right? Like, and it just like never left. And I had never dealt with anything even close to that. Like I had been flying under the radar, playing with house money. I'd been playing defense essentially. Right? No one expected anything of me. Yeah. We were little Utah. Like when we played Michigan or Texas A&M or Oregon, like no one expected us to win. And so like, it's like going out there with like nothing to lose. And then all of a sudden, like everything flipped, and I'm running out of the tunnel for the San Francisco 49ers. Like I remember it my rookie year at Candlestick, and like the weight of the world's on. In my mind, like here I am getting to do this amazing thing, right? Like what kid wouldn't, dream of that? And like my mind's 15 other places. Like literally, like my own worry and self-doubt and like this imposter syndrome is like, how long until they find out like I shouldn't have been the number one pick, right? Like how long until they figure out like I'm a bust, like I'm not good enough. Like what are they going to write about me in the paper? Like what if I throw an interception? Like all this negative self-talk. And it just consumed me. And it's a distraction, right? Like it's this giant, I've distracted myself. I'm like sabotaging myself, getting ready to do this incredibly hard thing. And I don't even know it though. I'm not aware of it, right? I'm not talking about this. These aren't like feelings you express especially in a football locker room, right? Like, and I thought I was alone. This is like, I think the thing in hindsight that like, I thought I was the only one that had those thoughts.
Yeah.
Right. So like, I just kind of,
which is the most, ironic part of anyone's journey.
And you come to find out, and this is why like it's so awesome to share this with Shane. And both of us played a long time. There's not a single guy in a locker room that I ever played with that didn't have those doubts, is the ironic thing. Like the biggest, baddest dudes on the planet, these are all alphas that like we played with. They also all had this same worry. They dealt with it. Now some deal with it better ways than others, right? But they all have it. It's present.
It is.
And I think that's the thing that I think people are so, sometimes when I go like talk and do these things, like we all deal with this. Like everybody has it. And it's not just sports, right? Like it's universal. It's life. Like that is there. And I think it's cool to be open about it. Cause so often I think people, they put athletes up on this pedestal and like, no, these guys are the baddest dudes and so confident and roaring. It's like, no, man, like we deal with the same stuff. It's just, obviously it's, when you're towing the line, you're taking the court every, a few times a week or once a week football game. Like you're out there, you put yourself out there, and it's hard. And again, I think these things are transferable away from sports too.
Oh,
right?
for
like
sure.
The same lessons learned apply everywhere.
Well, Ravi, I want to ask you about your bust moment. All right. So, we basically, the fear of the bust had propelled us to reach all of our dreams in our professional world. Where, in the corporate setting, where was your bust moment?
Totally. And I'm going to answer that in a second. Alex, it's interesting in that you were super, like your college was playing free, right? You get to the pros, you have this worry. And at the beginning, it hurts. Like you're not playing as well, partly because you're worried. Shane, you said you were worried starting in the 7th grade, right? Like there's some fear of being a bust, but like it didn't affect you obviously negatively, right? The way Alex said it did at first. So like, before we go to anything else, like, do you feel like your worry, like you said, propelled you versus Alex? You're talking about your worry kind of like impacted you negatively, didn't let you be yourself. Like, it's a kind of interesting, right? There's a different reaction to the same word, in two like athletes. Like, Shane, did you play well even when you had that fear or worry?
The phrase that was most applicable to me was failure was not an option.
Yeah.
Right. And so while the fear and what the implications were of being a bust were omnipresent and I thought about them, I never saw that as like, that's an alternative. And so literally, like, I talk about burning the ships. The Vikings, they invaded the land. They burned the ships. You're either going to take over the land or you're going to die trying. Like that was me. And so, I was motivated by fear, but I never considered the alternative as a reality, right? And so, it goes back to what do I need to do to stay on the court? What do I need to do? It doesn't matter what it takes to stay in the game, to always get picked for the next pickup game, right? And be an amazing value to my team. And so, I let go of public narrative a long time ago. All right.
Do you think you dealt with it sooner than in your career?
Oh yeah.
See, like these are things that I dealt with, and I think I learned to move past.
Yeah.
But I did them on such a this all happened to me on like such a public stage. Where it's like, do you think you know what I'm saying? Do you think you learned to cope with that and move beyond it earlier in your career?
I think being mixed was a huge part of my success. right? I was always the black guy with my white crew, and I was always the white guy around the black crew. And so no matter what I did, no matter how I shaped it, no matter how good of a guy I was always different. Right. And I realized there are some things I just can't control. And most of that is other people's opinions and their prejudices against me. Right. So I learned to let go, like what people thought of me a long time ago. Now I'm a kid. Look, no one wants to be hated, or no one wants, everyone wants to be loved and told they're great. And so talk about that edge you had. I had that edge. I'm like, you know what? You're gonna accept me. Not because of anything else, but like you need me out there, and you need me on your team. And so my edge was completely different. I was gonna kick down the door, and you're gonna let me in, whether you like it or not. And metaphorically, of course, I'm not a burglar.
That chip though, you had you need it.
I had an edge. And look, I was not popular. I go to Duke before it was cool. Or now it's cool. You got Zion and Jason Tatum and the Brotherhood. It's cool. When I went, people were hating on me, and it wasn't. I was this preppy kid. Everyone thought I was this rich kid because I went to Duke. They thought I was a soft kid because I went to Duke. It didn't matter. There was nothing anyone could think of me, could say about me that would affect what I was capable of doing, and my effort and my attitude. And so learn to control everything that I could control to the 99th percentile. And I was okay failing. If that failed, I could live with that. And so learning to let go of the outside narrative was the way that I fought that fear of being a bust. Because even if I fail, doesn't matter. I gave it my all.
Yeah, and that's the thing, Alex. So Shane, to answer your question on my bust moment, I'll give you a little background first. But I grew, my parents are from India. They're the ones with the tough life. I had a much easier life, right? My grandfather came from India. He was the first one. This is 1957. Brown guy coming to the States in Alabama. He went to Auburn. It was a weird time. But anyway, my life was much easier than that, and I was a pretty carefree kid. My brother was very judicious and very studious, and I was kind of, pretty free. And I thought I was going to play in the NBA. And my dad, when I was 10 years old or 11 years old, which I still think is a touch early, was sort of listen, son, that is not what's going to happen here. He's kind of went through some math with me of look, you're the second best player on your sixth grade team. And we live in a rando town. This is not where this is going. You're not going to be that tall. Just pretty clearly, that is not the plan. And so I remember being pretty surprised, because I just thought that was what was going to happen. And then he was that's not the plan. Anyway, but I think I was relatively bright. I, was able to get good grades without doing a lot of, work. And I just kind of thought that was the way it went. You just did that. And so it was like that for me, honestly, until I went to college. And the first moment I ever had that was surprising to the negative academically was I tried to get an internship in college. And then I was summarily dismissed from everywhere. Everywhere I applied was just and that was the first time that I ever wanted something that I was trying to get other than the NBA, which was, again, knocked out pretty early. But school wise or work wise, first time was when I was in college. And that was kind of the first moment where I was oh shit, I actually have to work at this stuff if I want to get things I want. So was lucky to get a job, all that. We can go through that. But I think, again, to your question on the bus, I was successful in my first job. Cool. That was two years at McKinsey. My second job was at KKR, and I was successful in that for the first few years. And then I went over to the investment side. And again, was trying to learn the ropes. And that was probably the first time I ever was fearful of getting fired. And I think on your point of the bust, the first emotion you have when you're fearful of getting fired, at least in my world, is embarrassment. It's actually less you think you're going to starve or something, right? It's just oh my God, what is everyone going to say? Right?
Yep.
What is everyone going to say if I get fired? Yep. What am I going to tell everybody? And this is why I really admire you guys having to do stuff in public. Remember, who is everyone for me, right? There's no nobody's writing about my career. I'm not out in public. So I was just worried about my friends, my family, my, the people that I worked with, all this stuff. So the first moment that I had that was like fearful of that was at KKR. And, the only reaction to it was like, try to work harder because I was trying to be cool. I was trying to act like I knew what I was doing without actually knowing what I was doing, right? I was trying to act like I had it rather than kind of go do the groundwork of like building up the skill set. Cause I was doing a new job in the same place. So I kind of had to like swallow my pride and go do the work of the most junior person. I was trying to act like I was more senior and I kind of had to like go start again, So that was like real.
Did you ever feel like you were in over your head at that point?
I remember crying at my desk, sitting there because like you're there and you're there by yourself. It's late and you're like, I don't know the first thing about what I'm going to try to do. And you guys have much better stories than me, but I can tell you anyone who's ever worked in like a corporate job, when you are asked to do something, you're sitting in front of a fucking blank screen. Like I still remember I was sitting in front of a blank Excel screen. I was supposed to build a LBO model. Okay. I'm like, should we buy this company or not? And I got a blank screen. I got a flashing cursor. Okay. And I don't know the first thing to do. I don't know what to type into the computer to make one of these models come out. And I'm sitting there. It's like 11 o'clock at night. It's due the next morning. Right. And I'm like, what am I going to do? And then that's like the full moment of like, think about how embarrassed you are. You're working, you like have a job, you're like a grown up. And I'm sitting there and I'm crying at this desk, like trying to hold it back, being like, I don't know what I'm going to do. I don't know how this is going to happen. So that was like the first moment, but the better one, Shane, was at Instacart for sure. Because then like I kind of got through that at KKR, right? I thought I started doing an okay job. But when I went into Instacart, I like went, and this was the first time my analogy there was like, at KKR, I was never like on the podium after the game, right? I was like a mid-level person, upper mid-level person. But like if something went well, something didn't go well, I was never the one who was like accountable. It was always someone else's thing. When I went to Instacart, I was a CFO, right? Like, and so when I go there and I think we're going to go bankrupt, 100 years ago, the company's amazing now, all that stuff. But like, so long ago when I first go there and I realize a month in, like, oh shit, we are like on path to go out of business. I remember the exact feeling I had. I'm like, I'm the chief financial officer of this company. Like, this is on me. What if I'm the CFO of a company that like ceases to exist? What am I going to do then? How do you bounce back from that? It's not like you can point to somebody else and be like, well, like, this person messed it up. I'm like, literally my job is to like make sure we have a business. So that was the first like moment where I remember being like, oh God. Like, what am I going to do? And like, I'm not proud of what I'll tell you next. Like, my first reaction was not like failure is not an option. It was like, maybe I could go back to KKR. Maybe I could go back and tell them like, hey guys, like I made a mistake. Cause I'd only been there like a month or two. I was going through the full calculation in my head. I'm like, well, like I could sort of like go back. What will the gap in my resume look like? Maybe I could like say I worked there from this date to this date. Like, all these things, like all the bad thoughts. Like my first reaction was maybe I could run away. But, obviously I'm glad I didn't do that. I'm glad that's not, what my reaction was. But like, I'll tell you what I did, Shane, on like the bust moment, and the moment of being afraid. I just tried to say the worst thing out loud that could happen. I just tried to say it to myself. Like, what is the worst thing that could happen? I'd say like, look, this company could go bankrupt. I could be the CFO of it. And everyone could think I'm stupid. And I try to do this outwardly. I try to like literally say it out loud by myself when I'm like worried about something. And I was worried about that. And then I did try to go through like, well, what would happen then? And what I kind of realized was like, what would happen then was like, I'd come home. I would try to see if my wife still wanted to be with me. I presumed that she would. I would see if my kids still love me. I presumed that they would, and I was kind of like, and in a worst case, I'll like move from California. We'll move to, North Carolina or somewhere where I can not have to have a job like this. And like, I'll kind of start again. And I was like, okay, well, like I can deal with that. And I think truly like what happens for me, and I do this to this day, I'm 42 years old. When I am stressed about something, when I'm worried about something, I like say the worst thing that could happen out loud. And usually it's something that I can deal with. And I think there's like a negative to that. There are some things where like, I don't think I would feel good about them, in the worst case. But I learned that actually, funny enough, I learned this from my dad. I remember one time I was a kid and my dad was like a advice giver. Like people really like come to him asking him for his perspectives. Like he's very wise. And so people would come to him and they would tell him their real stuff. My dad's also, he's very good at like not telling people things. He's very good. Like he's a vault. And so I still remember one time there was this like young guy who'd come to the house and was talking to my dad. And I wasn't supposed to like be listening, but I was like going to get something to drink from the kitchen or whatever. And I still remember what happened, but I could kind of piece it together. This guy apparently was having some marital problems. Okay. And I think it was his fault. And so he'd come to my dad to be like, what do I do? And my dad, literally, I still remember him hearing this. I remember where I was. My dad said, look, you have to understand that there is a chance that the marriage might end. Okay. And you gotta understand that. Like what you've done, there is a chance the marriage might end. That's a real possibility. Now we're going to try and make that not happen, but there's a real possibility that happens. You got to get okay with that. And I remember being like, whoa, like, can you imagine this like young dude who like came here hoping that the guy would solve his problems? And partly it's like, look, like you fucked up. Like this thing might be over, you know? And that I think is where I like learned like that is a helpful framing for like when something might go wrong. But again, like I've never had to deal with anything as public as you guys, like, you know, tech press and Twitter and all this.
It's all the same though, right? It's like, it's the game within the game. Like we all have our own like circles. And to us, no matter what your circle is, like it means the world to you, right? So like the pressure's no different. Like, again, I think it's no different whether like the professional sport or like the private industry, like it's all the same because it's your world, right? And I think honestly, I don't think there's anything negative and only positives about your example and your tool really of like, what is the worst thing that can happen and be getting face to face with it. Right. And I think that's what I wasn't doing my first several years in the league. Like I was trying to pretend like it wasn't happening, even though this thing haunted me. Right. And like consumed me. I was like trying to pretend that like it wasn't there and it wasn't a possibility. And I would have been far better to say like, no, the reality is like, I may be a bust. I may fail. And I think that's the only way to move past the fear of failure that we're all talking about is like, you have to confront it first. And again, I was trying to pretend like it wasn't happening. And so it just festered and got worse actually. And I think there's certainly like great examples of this in general, even on a bigger scale when we think about death, right? Like how many times do all of us not want to talk about this thing? I'm like, guess what? We're all going to die. Right. Like, and the sooner I think you come face to face with that, the better you're going to live while you're here. Right. And I think it's no different than like all these little things we're doing, whether it be our careers or sports or whatever. And I think you have to move past that fear of failure. And I think it only comes from confronting it. And I'm going to steal it, Ravi. I'm telling you right now, I'm going to steal that.
I love it, man. I love it. I'm very happy about that.
Like the things we learned from our dad, because like to even flash forward to me as a dad, as a parent now, like when I see my kids doing whatever they're doing, right? Like whether it's my son playing sports or my other son doing musicals or my daughter dancing competitively, like nothing makes me more proud than to see them go out and attack something free.
Totally.
Right.
Freely.
Being free. And nothing actually like for me, like is where I feel like I failed as a father when I see them not, right? Like I'll see my son look over to the sidelines in the middle of a game and I'm like, no. I've been there. I don't want you to be there, you know? And like, so I think it's an amazing tool. Like you have to come face to face with like the reality of it. And I get asked all the time about Patrick Mahomes, right? Like, what is it about him? Certainly he's incredibly physically gifted. He's absurdly smart and competitive. I think the people don't, he's so good. The other thing is though, I think his fear of failure is like a lot less than everybody else's. Like, it's like the thing I think about in basketball, Shane, like the guy taking the last shot, like the Steph Curry, right? Like, I think we all idolize these guys that hit the last shot. The reality is they missed the majority of those, right? And to take it, you have to be willing to like, I'm the guy that missed the last shot. And Patrick has that. Like the 2-minute drill, the end of the game, Patrick's the guy that like wants the ball. Like there were a lot of times I was on the bench and I'm like crossing my fingers, like, come on, defense, make the play for me. So I could, you know, like I didn't want it. Like
we talked about that be out there yesterday about hiding. Hiding. A lot of people are hiding from the ball.
Oh, yeah. But like Patrick's running from the ball. No, I want it. I want the ball, right? Like I don't care if I fail. Like, and again, that's what makes that so rare on that level. Like, you know what I'm saying? Wherever you are in your circle. So again, like I think it's invaluable when we talk about, like, again, we all deal with fear of failure. And that's what we talked about with the bus thing. Like, but what do you do with it? And again, I think confronting is such an important part of like ever getting beyond it.
My takeaways from both your stories, and something that I heard a talk about, but it strikes me, and I listened to this very carefully, is like our idea of what courage is from popular media is not necessarily the right one. You know, we ask anybody what's courage, people say, "Oh, it's heroic courage. It's Rambo. It's Rocky. It's Tom Cruise and Mission Impossible, and just doing these crazy feats of bravery when the adversity is high." And someone had to talk about everyday courage, and it's the small little acts that you do every single day just to get by, right? And whether that, just keep pounding that rock. And it takes courage, because so many people in this world, they get stuck in the moment and they think they can't go on. And it's just too hard. It's insurmountable. And a part of them gives up, and Lord knows what happens. But both of your stories remind me of just trying to do the right thing every time, every day. And that's an amazing example of everyday courage.
Yeah, I think the other thing, I love that, Alex, I don't know if you've ever seen Shane's backpack. He has a sign on it that says "Embrace the suck," like a little patch that says, and I like that. I'm just like, look, you got to go towards this, like the obstacle is the way, that kind of thing.
Yep.
For me, that what you just said about the, you're going to say the worst thing out loud. For me, that version of that is embrace reality. It's fucking there anyway. Whatever it is, just go and own it. Embrace it and play with that, because otherwise I think that it's this thing we were talking about the other day of just like you're lying to yourself, and that's like the real problem, right? But whatever it is, you got to acknowledge it. And then on the free point, it so resonates with me, your point on watching your kids. Nothing makes me feel better or warmer, just good to watch them just doing shit with abandon. Whatever it is, even if they're just running as fast as they can somewhere, I love it, because I just want them to know, we love you, and you are everything we want. And I just want you to be your 100% you. You know what I'm saying? I just want you, that's what I want you to do. And so I love when they have that, and it kills me. It kills me when they feel something different. The other day, my kids were talking, and we were asking, what birth order would you, they were arguing about something. And I was like, guys, and then you're lucky because you're the oldest. You're lucky because you're in the middle. You're lucky. Oh, okay. What order would you have preferred to be if you could choose? And they all give something that's not the number that they are. The oldest one said he wishes he wasn't the oldest. Someone else said they wish the old, whatever. But one of them I asked, I was like, why? Why did you say that? And they're like, well, when you're the oldest. By the way, he's older by 5 minutes. Okay, 5 minutes. He's a twin. He's like, everyone expects you to win at everything. And I'm kind of like, bro, what are you talking? Who's everyone? Who expects you to win everything?
His world, though, his circle.
Right, in his world. But it was so real. My first reaction was like, what are we talking about? Then I was like, my kid feels like there's these expectations on him to win. I'm like, we got to fix that, right? We got to handle that. But for him at 11, he's talking about the expectations on him. And but it really going back, it hurt me of damn, I don't want him to feel like there's that. If I have high expectations for him, I want him to be on purpose. I want him to feel high expectations on things I want him to feel high expectations on, not on random shit, So I don't know. That resonated a lot with me, what you were talking about with your kids.
It's so funny. Just on a dad moment, I had to circle back with your dad and your 10-year-old self getting the basketball talk. My freshman year, when I told you I was again, 5'7", 107 pounds, and the slowest guy in the team. My first year playing tackle football that I'd been dreaming about, my dad literally had to pull me aside and was like, son, do you think maybe you should go out for cross country instead of football? And again, he's a hero of mine, right? He played college football. This is he's tough. And and he was like, maybe this isn't for you. Even freshman football is probably not for you, And yeah, well,
do you talk about this? Do you talk about this? When was the last time you brought that up?
I remind him all the time, sokingly. The same with my mom for telling me I should have gone to Dartmouth, but he's a dad, he's being a dad. And again, obviously so much of how I am as a father is based off him and, his example. no doubt, like with your kids going back to it, like as they get older, it just gets harder. Like my oldest is 13 now, and like it starts to get more competitive. Shane, I'd love to hear your thoughts, like because your son's even older and in more competitive environment. But like, how do you keep them in that healthy side where they're attacking things and like playing free and like like they aren't. There isn't this expectation on them, and it's like, and Ravi, I told you this, like I'm so, like it definitely consumes me. Like I played professional football for 16 years. Like my son somehow maybe thinks that that's an expect. He wants to play football. He wants to play quarterback. Like that he thinks that that's normal and achievable, right? And like I was so incredibly lucky, and so many things had to go right, right? Like for me to have achieved that, and somehow I never like again I didn't have that weight growing up, and like somehow he may think and how do I deal with that now? Like that again, and I don't know. But that's definitely something that's always, it never leaves me, and so how do I keep him in a healthy perspective towards struggle, towards a fear of failure, right? Like no matter what he's doing, school or sports or activities, whatever that, his thing is.
I mean, Shane, you should talk about Zeke, or talk about what it feels like, because there's definitely, to me, there's like another parenting angle that's not sports related that is kind of interesting, bridge off this. But I'd rather hear your opinion real quick.
Well, look, my kids will never have the same experience I had growing up, and that's okay. We all have to run our own race. We all start. I always say to my kids, start where you are. Start where you are. All right, we're all in different places, and what's great for me may not be great for you. What's great for you may not be great for me. And I've changed my way of thinking about young people, and a lot of the lessons that my parents taught me probably wouldn't be popular not these days. And I got to know a researcher at the University of Texas who told me something very interesting about the development of adolescent brain. And really from ages 20 to 25, this goes into in my corporate talks, everyone asks me, how do I deal with millennials? And my friend David Yeager just wrote a book about how the human brain at 25 has more in common with a 10-year-old than it does a 30-year-old. For the very fact that the way we've evolved as humans is that we have constantly lived our lives for social status and acceptance. And this goes back to the early days of hunter-gatherers, where if you couldn't help the tribe hunt or gather food, you were ousted. You were told to walk, literally walk to the edge of the village and keep walking. Don't turn around, right? If you can't help this, you're against us, right? And so from an evolutionary standpoint, from a sociological standpoint, we've always evolved, especially as young people, to scan the environment and say, do I have status? Am I being disrespected? Right? And, look at the proliferation of social media, TikTok and Instagram and all, and they tap into that vein, and they keep that pressure constantly on those two things. Do I have status, and am I being respected? Right? And so thinking back my own journey, which again was very public, and I was dealing with a lot of stuff, but it held true for me. I was looking for status, whether that was racial status, whether that's basketball status, whether that was wealth status. I assume you guys would feel the same way, and so I feel bad for these kids now because they have so many external stimuli that are, again, tapping on that status, that status pulse. And so they're just trying to do the best they can, and they're trying to make sense of the world like we were. And once you turn about age 30, you realize that status is not the most important thing in the world, but it takes until your brain literally is 27, 28 years old to develop fully, to turn that part of the brain off. And still, even now, we're affected by it. And so I have tremendous empathy and compassion for my kids and all kids for that search for status. And as much as you can tell them, hey, it doesn't matter what they say online. It doesn't matter what they said about you at school or the lunch table. To them, and going back to hunter-gatherer days, it is the most important thing. And so, it goes back to me to empathy, compassion, communication, telling my kids I'm proud of them, and you don't have to be anybody but the best Zeke and always bad age you could be. And that's what the one thing that my parents told me, which was the best thing they ever could say to me.
It's interesting because, so like coming from I don't know how your guys' parents were, coming from like a immigrant family, there's like a real pride. You guys have certainly heard about like Asian parents or whatever, of like high expectations for your kids, particularly academically. Like there's like a real pride in like, hey, we have high standards. And like, my parents had no expectations for us, sports or anything like that, but they had extremely high expectations for my brother and me, like academic. We were going to be really good at math. We were going to be very, very, very good at math. It's like, hey, well, what is your problem? Why is this hard for you? Like, let's go, And like, they were sort of like, you don't have to like get a good job, but you need to have the grades that can get you a good job. Like that is a big deal for us. And, it's interesting, like on your point on like things that you learn from your parents that are unpopular or popular, now, like, I don't know if it's popular or not, or I suspect it's not, but like we definitely have higher expectations for our kids academically than like an average parent. Like we have definitely kept that up of like, listen, like, and so I do wonder about that sometimes of like, it isn't just like a free flow, like do whatever you want house. It is definitely like, we expect that you will perform academically. Now I'm not trying to put a lot of pressure on them, but I am trying to toe that line of like not a lot of pressure, but still high expectations. Like, I know you can do more. I know you can do a lot, and I expect you to do a lot. We take some pride in of like high expectations.
This is something that I've tried to do as a parent, and I don't know if it's right, but like it comes from a work ethic standpoint, right? Like you can achieve these grades through work, not necessarily ability. And it's certainly something that I try to praise my kids, whether it be in school or again, their activities or whatever they're pursuing, that when they do something well, instead of saying great job or great achievement, I really try to focus on their work and sacrifice and like the process. And again, try to constantly reinforce that as opposed to some mark they hit. Because again, it doesn't matter. And on the flip side, you will fail, right? Like, and that's not important either. It's the process. And so it is something that I think especially as they get older, I try to reinforce that as often as possible.
Yeah, for sure. And like we definitely, at my best, that's what we're doing, right? Hey, listen, like your best can achieve a lot. Go do your best and we'll be happy. I think that like, sometimes you do fall, at least we fall into like output metrics for that of like, well, what did we get here? But I definitely, where it comes from.
Sometimes we all do that. We're all guilty of that.
Yeah, exactly.
As much as we want to say, it's about the process, it's about the journey. Like it is so hard. It is so hard.
I do it on my golf game all the time.
Yeah,
I wish I could be I wish I could just be like, I'm hitting it good, even though I'm not scoring.
Exactly.
So it's not that I don't do it.
No, I have, of course.
Let's
and like
be real.
Basically, it's like you don't observe all the process all the time, right? And so you observe the outcome, and then you're kind of like, well, what the hell happened here? And what I can say, what's interesting is on this point, though, of like, I guess I come back to like, it's this funny thing of like, I want my kids to be joyful. I want them to be free. I want them to whatever, but I'm trying to like toe this line of like, almost like earn the right to play, to be free, earn the right to play free. Like in sports, sometimes I'm like, look, like I want you to feel good. I don't want you looking at the sidelines, but you got to go to practice and play hard in order to earn that. You got to go and play pickup. If you want to do that, you have to put in the work to go and do that. And the same thing for school of like, well, what did you expect you're going to get on this test that you didn't study at all? Like, what are we talking about? And it is this interesting balance where like, what I'm trying to get into them is this idea of like, if you put in the work, good things will happen. And also, even if it doesn't, that's okay. But I'm going to call you out if you don't put in the work, like you can't expect that things are going to be great if you haven't worked at it. And by the way, the funny thing for me on saying that is like, that's a lesson I learned much later in life. Like, I told you, when I say I was carefree as a kid, like that's kind of code for like, I was kind of lazy. And so the big fear I have as a parent is that my kids are going to be infected with some of my like natural laziness rather than getting their mothers work ethic. Like I hope to God they're getting hers. But that's like one of the fears I have as a parent is like my bad stuff will go to them.
Well, Ravi and Alex, you guys are both resilient motherfuckers, right? And so I come back to, I'm the opposite. Like I want my kids to do well and try hard and do all that, but I want them to be resilient. That is the number one trait, right? Whether you're hiring somebody, whether you want someone that, is marrying your kid off to, a spouse, you want someone who can just figure the shit out when the shit hits the fan. That's the number one thing, right? And
I agree with that wholeheartedly.
Which is a really healthy, I think, such a healthy mindset. Like if you just want your kid to be gritty, resilient. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, we wouldn't be here on this podcast if we didn't have, the dog in us. And it's all been curated and sliced different ways. And how we got to that, there was a point in all of our lives when we said, oh shit, we got to figure this out. Right. And we pulled it together and we had support around us, obviously. But, a lot of it was just sheer will and figure it out. Right. And so that's the thing I think about the most with my kids. How do I give that to them? Just the dog and just, hey, I'm just going to figure it out.
I think that's incredibly healthy. The problem is I think 99.99% of parents want the achievement, it's achievement based. They want their kid to reach great heights and like they want it, and then they end up giving it to them. I know I fall victim to this. Like you want to help them, but like you do it for them then, or you know what I'm saying? Like you make it easy. I guess I should say, I want to make it as easy as possible because I want them to make this achievement. But that's actually like very like contradictory. And I'm doing the opposite of what you're saying, right? Like figure it out. You got to build that,
like the crazy thing is, and Alex, I'm sure we'll talk about this later, but like some of the shit you've been through, that's like obvious and external, like, it's crazy to come on the other side and say that those things were actually helpful to you, right? Like when they happened, can you even have fucking imagined that you would ever say that those hard things were positive?
Absolutely nuts. Not only did I needed it, but that's where I grew. Like I wouldn't be who I am today if it wasn't for the moments of struggle. And that's where growth happens. Right? Like that's where like step function happens. Like it doesn't happen through success. It doesn't happen through smooth sailing. It certainly doesn't happen with a parent just snow plowing everything out in front of their kid. Right? Even though that's what we want, because we want so much to protect our kids, protect them and have them what's best for them. But absolutely looking back, and it doesn't happen when you're young and when you're in it. There's no way that when I like all the struggles as a professionally, and then certainly when I broke my leg and in a wheelchair and they're talking about cutting it off, am I thinking that this is good for me somehow?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. That's what I'm saying.
Absolute bad luck calamity that like somehow this infection's eating at my leg and like they're going to cut my leg off now. And however, in hindsight though, now without 1,000% agree, like changed my life. I'm a better person because I went through that. Absolutely. Now I'm also incredibly lucky, obviously, that like I still have my leg and can go do a lot. But no, like when you're in these things, it sucks. It sucks. You don't have that mindset, but I do think it's important to keep. And I think it's important also the circle we have around us. And I'm so reminded and I've heard you guys tell this story, Shane, your email that you wrote Ravi when
Amazon bought Whole Foods. Yeah.
Right. And it's the mindset of like,
totally
bring it on, right? Like that I was built for this adversity and I'm going to make it through and I'm going to figure it out. I may not know right now the way through it. Right. But I'm the mindset of like, I can get through this. And that is so different. Again, even to like, I think back to like when like haunted as a rookie about the bus thing, like I didn't have that mindset towards this. Like, I'm going to get through this. Right. Like I didn't, it was too much. It was uncomfortable. I didn't like it. I go on, you know what I'm saying? Like those are very different things. And I think it's such an important as we all face adversity, again, in our circles, like that be on that side, right? Get yourself on that side. However possible, but it's easy. That's easier said than done, right? Like that's the hard part.
It's so cool you brought that up because I actually have like a thought that came from this. And, anyway, Shane, the email, of course, you sent me that long one, when Amazon bought Whole Foods of me calling you being like, we got a big problem. And then you calling, you emailing and being like, I know we just talked, but like, here's why it's going to be good. And you told some stories of your own resilience. It's super interesting because I still remember 2 or 3 things that were like written in there. One is like, you were built for this. Like, like a very real, like you, not just you got this, but like, this is why you're you. Like, so that was cool. Second thing is how lucky are you have a chance to become anti-fragile, which was just language. I mean, this is 7 years ago, right? Like, and I remember the words in the email. How lucky are you? You have a chance to become anti-fragile. And then the last part, which is like, when you get through this, we're going to go to Napa and drink the really expensive shit. Like, I just like to have some fun. Like at the end of this thing. But Tyler Cowen has this great line about one of the best things you can do is like elevate people's ambition. Like, one of the things that you can do as a friend or like as a mentor, as a professional, like elevate their ambition, which is like really cool, like a really cool concept of like, that is something that you have the power to do for people, right? All of us do. Like, you could do this, you could do that. Like, that's cool. To me, what you did there, and there's this concept of lateral discipline in the military, a lot of like, you keep your troops in line, not by the leader, but by the folks around them. You had like elevated my resilience there. Right? Like you were kind of like, hey, like you got it, and somebody who's like a peer or your friend or someone you admire is telling you like, no, you can do this. You will do this, and you'll come out on the other side and you'll be galvanized. That's actually like a pretty like noble thing to do on your like everyday courage point. Helping somebody else be courageous. That's like a really good and impactful thing to do, And I don't think we always do that. Like, do we always reach out when somebody has it and be like, yo, you got it, and I'm going to be there with you?
Do you think it's a quality of a glue guy?
I think that might be
like, that elevates like your teammate,
totally,
right?
Totally.
Like, essentially you're a good teammate.
I think so.
Yeah. And Ravi, I don't know like how I pulled that out. All right. All you see in a situation where your friend's hurting and you're just like, man, I got the news. I'm like, oh shit, this is not good. This is not good for the home team. This is gonna severely impact Ravi when the Amazon monster comes in. What can I say to him? I mean, and so again, you're not trying to be a hero. You're not trying to solve all the problems. You're just trying to elevate your teammates. Hey, man, you got this. Yeah, you're built for this. You got this. It's gonna be a great story on the other side. Hold my beer. Hold my beer. Well, do this thing. And so again, like, it goes back to the pickup game. All right. What can you do to help you stay on the court? And so for me, like, your court was Instacart. How can I keep Ravi on the court here, man? If I gotta die for loose balls and set picks and just cheer and clap him and get him, be his hype man, like, man, okay, I got that. And so, like, can you teach people to be glue guys? Yeah, just like try to help people. Again, everyday courage. Try to do the right thing every time, every day. It doesn't have to be crazy speeches or emails or anything like that. It's just a simple gesture. And like, I didn't think it was that big of a deal, to be honest with you.
Yeah, but see, that's what's cool. But what, Alex, what I think makes somebody a glue guy? It's caring about what someone else needs on the team, right? And then actually fucking doing it. Right. Because all Shane did there, right? Like, he's saying it's a small thing, huge thing to me, but like thinking about somebody else, thinking about what his teammate needed, and then actually going and doing it. That was it. 1, 2. And all of a sudden I remember for the rest of my life, like there's, oh man, there's like that's
there's so much there, honestly. And I'm stealing Anti-Fragile. I absolutely love it. We're gonna have to get some shirts made. Shirts that just say Anti-Fragile. I aspire to be that. But and this is another thing, but like, you don't know the effect you have on your teammates. And I have one of the mottos that I stole is this: just live, right? And I stole it from a teammate that he had no idea the effect he had on me. I didn't tell him at the time, but it changed my life. Right. And it was like, that's, again, it's
how cool is that?
Like,
how cool is that that guy changed your life just by him doing the thing he told you to do?
Yep. Totally. So, but Anti-Fragile, I'm just letting you know. I love that.
Shane, are you going to tell him that you stole that from somebody, or are you going to take credit for Anti-Fragile right now?
You actually laugh. I took that from fantasy football, to be honest with you. And, don't get me started on fantasy football. This is so true. Like, but I'm a 0 RB drafter. I love my receivers. Everyone laughs at me. I go straight receivers for the first like 8 rounds of every draft, and everyone just mocks me. And I say, you know what? I'm gonna get these backup running backs, and by the end of the year, they're gonna be playing. And as the season goes on, I'm gonna get better. I'm gonna be anti-fragile. So all these injuries are gonna decimate these rosters, and I'm only gonna get better. And so I must have been reading a blog or doing some research when the news came across about Whole Foods and Instacart, and so we have fantasy football to thank for that, Ravi.
Shane just cheering when guys are going down on Sunday.
Yeah, he's I'm going to be stronger. But, of course, the author, Nassim Taleb, takes credit for coming up with the concept. But you know what? Like, we'll give him the shout out here. But for us, it's Shane Battier. It's the commission. That's the one who came up with it for us. Oh, man. God, I think we defined glue guy. I feel pretty good about that.
Yeah. I thought this was awesome.